The Finance Committee of your Archdiocese is a hard-working committee. It has been privileged, it's been my privilege, to meet with many people from the metropolis. The Metropolis Finance Committees, in joint consultation with the Archdiocesan Finance Committee, has expanded our horizons in the last few years. On your table, you will find the minutes of our last meeting and our session here. We had in excess, if I am not mistaken, of 234 people attending to help make decisions, approve a budget, hear the reports, and I'm very proud of that fact that we always have this kind of an attendance when we do something. I'm going to touch on a few items. I'm going to have Jerry then guide us through some very important financial pieces of information, and then we'll take some questions. This parish software initiative that you've all heard about, I don't know how many of you have been to the booth. It is one of our most fantastic offerings to our parishes. If you haven't been to the booth, sneak down there and take a look at it, because I am just totally amazed. Although I was very upset, I must tell you. Went down to the booth after spending an afternoon with Nick and his committee, and there are screens all over this booth, computer this, channels that, and I'm in awe, and people are coming up and inquiring, what do I see on the table? A piece of paper with a pencil and people writing their names and addresses on this piece of paper for information purposes. I turned to Nick and I turned to Tom and I said, this is unacceptable, totally unacceptable. Here we are with all this computerization sitting here. Couldn't you at least have a little computer down here so people could type their names in and addresses and you'd have a record electronically? I was pleased to say that the next morning that was down here. So I wanted to let you know a little bit about what is going on in this Orthodox parish management system. I'm going to ask Nick Sialmas, who has a debt of gratitude that we cannot ever repay. Talk about people, talk about our people in this Archdiocese. He had a team from coast to coast of technicians, experts, one phase, the other phase. A fantastic job. I'd like to hear a round of applause for Nicholas, because he did a fantastic job.
Your Eminence, Archbishop Demetrius, Your Eminence, Metropolitan Sotirius of Canada, Your Eminences, Your Graces, Reverend Fathers and brothers and sisters in Christ. It's kind of interesting when you hear an analog person, George, telling digital people to use a digital piece of equipment. We all woke up real quick. When we think about this whole project, there are people from all over the country that worked on it. And it starts really with a partnership. And I'm going to show you a list of all the people that were actually involved and who continue to be involved at different phases, and more people will be coming on. And that's really what stewardship is about, right? It's about time and talent and giving back. But it's also important to know that we formed a partnership with this vendor that we selected, Parish Data System. So just some quick background. It really started in 2009. 2010, it picked up some momentum. It was really about standardizing and finding a way that we could utilize something for our parishes that would be consistent over time. Instead of starting, stopping, somebody new comes into the parish, starts all over, something consistent. And then in 2010, we started the evaluation selection process. From there, we went on to actually starting to build it, but here's a list of people. Right, you could see, it's probably hard to see all the names, but I think there's 3 people still here in the audience. There's Deacon Carey, and I see Stephen, they're sitting together, and I know Jeffrey Gowan. So it's Stephen Carniotis, Deacon Carey, and somewhere in here, way over there, is Jeffrey Gowan. But there was a large list of people, and their skills are from all walks of the business world. So what's our challenge? We didn't have an infrastructure to work in. Basically, the only way we could really work was by conference call through all the time zones. So it was a balancing. But the biggest single challenge that we had in putting this together, how do you balance people's lives? So how do people continue to help, yet they have their personal family and their work things they had to worry about? But somehow we did it. Basically, the program is broken into 3 components. You have a parish at the parish level, and then it'll be at the metropolis level and the archdiocese level. And I will tell you, it's a push model. No one's going to be looking inside to see what's going on in the parish. I've been a parish president a total of 13 years. I understand that. The bottom line is the parish level. Just like you have this clergy laity and you have general assemblies, it's all at the parish level and it comes upward. And that's really what we created. Here are some screenshots. I'm going through this relatively quickly because there is a lot of material and we could spend 2 days just going over it. But an initial slide is really where you're going to look at the data of the membership. And you can see there's a photograph there as well. You could build a directory. Inside there also is a location where the parish priest can add their own confidential information. So when you think about it, it's really in the day in the life of a parish, the administrator and the parish priest. Here's another slide. If you look at those tabs that are kind of like a 1/3 down, we basically, with the help of the volunteers on our side, working with their development team, we've taken a Catholic program and turned it into an Orthodox view. So we've taken out First Communion, Confirmation, and we've made sure what's it for Orthodox is there. It also has a very important financial component. And just on the one side where it's church office, you could put in your candles, your trays, but also all your stewardship information, what comes in, time and talent, what is being contributed by any steward in the parish, as well as following and maintaining capital projects. If you have any questions, I'll give you my phone number. If I do not answer you right away, that's because it's probably full and I'm busy. But if there are any questions, I'll try to entertain them as best I can now.
Thank you, Nicholas. If you notice the minutes of our meeting, that was the Parish Software Initiative. We also spoke heavily on the National Ministries allocation. An allocation DVD is being put together for us by Teddy Swiris of the Boston Metropolis. Another big initiative that was undertaken by a group of fine gentlemen was the National Insurance Program. Put together quite a package with these people who are investigating a self-insurance program. I know everybody thinks that maybe that's a little bit out in left field, but the figures that we've seen, the projections that we've been given, have given cause for the Finance Committee to approve them going to the next phase and really getting down to the nitty-gritty to see how we can make our Greek Orthodox Archdiocese self-insured and build a reserve for our ministries. The projections are amazing. I don't want to give them out until we've proven the facts. I thank Peter Skiatis for his leadership. They've done a fine, fine job. The other discussions that we had were on the 2013 and 14 budget, the Archdiocesan financial status, which Jerry will make a brief presentation on, and we discussed the audits for the end of the years. So I'm going to ask Jerry to give you the financial information that's imperative for you to know. Then we will take a vote on accepting the budget for 2013 and 14.
Thank you, George. I'm going to slide this over so I don't... No, that's good. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I would just like to take a moment to, first of all, thank the staff of the Archdiocese and the directors of the Archdiocese and the hard work. You saw a presentation from Teo a few minutes ago on technology. He has done an amazing job with his team in producing a lot with a little. The combined budget of Internet Ministries and technology is about $1 million. The rest of it comes from grants. I would tell you that if you were out in the real world trying to produce this material on the corporate side, they would spend a lot more money with a lot more people doing a lot less. The innovation that they have put forward in technology is superb, and it's there to help all the parishes in the country, and we hope that you use the resources. I'd also like to thank, in terms of the preparation of this Congress, because I won't get an opportunity to do so later, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And there are a lot of people who do a lot of things for this Archdiocese to prepare us for the Congress. First and foremost, my assistant, Marie Andriotis, who handles all of your registrations. Marissa, where's Marissa Costidis, who you heard before from Communications? Anything I ask for Marissa to do, she's there, she does it. She produces a huge amount of resource for us. Aliki Kurian, the director of the Office of the Archbishop, certainly always handling many, many things for us. Teo and Jamil, I mentioned before. Also John Mandala, all of the graphics that you see behind us, even tonight during the day, were all produced in-house by Archdiocese staff. And Nick Furis, who makes all this show happen very seamlessly when we ask for things, they happen. I want to thank all of them for their work in helping us get this together, so thank all of you. I also want to thank, first and foremost, the hierarchs, the synod, the metropolitans who work with us on the financial side and the finance committee. They have allowed us to do a lot of new things over the last 12 years, and some of that has paid off, and I think it's paying off for everybody, and we're working harder to make use of the resources that are provided to us and make efficient use of the resources. The Finance Committee that George mentioned is not only the National Finance Committee, but the local finance committees. If you go back, as I mentioned yesterday, 10 years ago, there was not an interaction between the Finance Committee of the Metropolis and the Finance Committee of the Archdiocese. Now we meet 4 times a year, all metropolises, all finance committees with the National Finance Committee, usually in Chicago. It's a 2-day meeting or a 1-day meeting, and we debate and discuss everything that you see before you. So there is a wealth of information that goes back and forth, and a lot of arguing that used to be done on the floor of a clergy lady congress is now done by the committees of the finance committees for the national and the local. What I'd like to do is just quickly bring you through where we've been over the last few years, and then talk about the budget very briefly, and then let George take over the rest of the program. The challenges that we face in this system that we've put together have been, how do we take the Archdiocese of America from what it was of a $9 million budget, bring it to a reality budget to where we need to be to provide as much ministry as we can for the parishes and for the people around the country. We've done that partially. We've gone from $10 million to about $22 million, $23 million, but we have a long way to go to bring this church to a budget that is something that is acceptable for a national organization and a national church that we are. In the challenges that we've faced, stewardship has come up. It was mentioned before, George Matthews was here before. That is the single largest issue that we face, and there's a lot of debate as to how we will proceed in funding that debate and funding that stewardship effort. And we intend to fund that effort through reaching out to Leadership 100 and Faith Endowment for grants, to spending it in our budget, which you see is a little bit increased going forward. But we need to put our emphasis on stewardship. And the stewardship team that started with George Matthews and Father Ted Barbas and Ron Harb, George Ravulius and Bill Marianis, and Father Jim Corderis, continues to work hard to produce material. You've seen some of the material that was presented before. But Bill Marianis and George Matthews have taken their time and their talents and their treasures, as George said before, and have traveled everywhere for this Archdiocese and for you and to educate and to teach everyone about stewardship, and they continue to do that. And I want to thank them publicly for all of their time and that they put in doing these presentations for the metropolises. So we'll go forward a little bit and we'll talk about where we have been. This is from 2006 to 2011. You'll see that our revenue is the blue line and the expenses are the red line. We have had fluctuating revenue based on really on our unrestricted contributions that have gone up and down, and our expenses as well. The expense side has varied greatly because of some of the legal obligations that we had in the past. As I've discussed yesterday at the Finance Committee meeting, and I won't go into here, those are overdone, and we are now, you see the expenses have dropped, and even from 2010 to 2011, we have reduced expenses on the national budget. And the income continues to rise, and we continue to be able to put more money into ministry as we look to go forward into the future. I just talked about the reduction and the legal situation of the Archdiocese in terms of the lawsuits. As you can see, the blue line at the top was our accounts payable back in 2006, which was about $6.7 million. Through the efforts of the Finance Committee and the Archdiocese and the fundraising that we've been doing, it is now down to $832,000. Our middle line, which was our notes payable, our loans and bank loans, was reduced from $4.6 million back in 2006 now to about $1.8 million. And that $1.8 million is actually serviced by a donor of the Archdiocese, so it doesn't really cost us anything to hold that note, and they help us with the obligation on that note as well. And the last line, which is something that we've worked hard, is the obligations to Hellenic College, Holy Cross, and the Ecumenical Patriarchate. During the difficult times that we had from our cash flow with our obligations, it was difficult for us to remain current with the school and to remain current with the Ecumenical Patriarchate obligation. So you see about $1.5 million was due back in 2006. That has reduced to zero. That amount now is paid in full and on time to the school and also to the Ecumenical Patriarchate, as well as over the last 2 years we've increased funding for the school from $1.2 million to $1.5 million for this year. So that was passed at the last Clergy Lady Congress. So progress is being made. We're taking down the debt, and we are looking to the future, like we had mentioned in the past, to start to grow the ministries of the church. The program that was developed by the Finance Committee also provides some success in terms of our numbers, in terms of the collection of the ministry allocation. If you go back several years, you will see that, and I'll take you to the next slide and I'll come back to this slide. You'll see that in 2006, from the bottom up, it was actually 2 metropolises in 2006, 2 metropolises in 2007, but if you go beyond 2006, there was only 1 metropolis that was able to hit 100% of the allocation collection over those years, and that was the metropolis of Chicago, which was consistently always collecting its 100%. So you see where we are today. We're now up to 6 metropolises. The direct Archdiocese district and 5 metropolises last year hit 100% of the allocated amount from the National Ministries commitment. That is significant, and that was the breakdown of last year's numbers. All but a few metropolises were able to hit that 100%. And what the system has done for the metropolises is provide an incentive with a bonus and a payback, a little bit more of a payback. So the monies that are coming in, we designed the system so that it would pay back to the metropolises additional funding for ministries locally. So the metropolis would get more funding out of this new system than the old system that we had, which was just a flat 25%. So if you look, if you can look, this is the breakdown of the bonus payouts over the last several years. The direct Archdiocesan district got one in 2011, New Jersey in 2011, Chicago from 2007 to 2011 for a total of $350,000, Boston for 3 years for $364,000, San Francisco for 2 years for $125,000. and $80,000 for Atlanta, and $263,000 for the metropolis of Detroit, and $81,000 for Denver. So the system is working. It's helping the metropolises like it's designed to do, and we continue to tweak it. It's not a perfect system. We know that. The Finance Committee always debates what can we change, what can we make better, how can we help this system be more equitable, be more stable, and also provide the revenue that we need for the Archdiocese and for the metropolises. Here you see a breakdown of our revenue from last year. It was 74% of our revenue came from the National Ministries commitment. If you go back in time to the late 90s, that number from the National Ministries commitment for the Archdiocese budget was about 98%. We continue to push that number down. We want to be in the 60 percentile range so that less burden is put onto all the parishes, and we do more on the Archdiocese side, raising money from unrestricted contributions and from other major donors. Here's our operating expenses. If you look at this, and I know we'll make all these available as well online so that you will all have this. You can pull these reports up by tomorrow, and you can share them with your parishes and look at them as well. If you look at this pie of our expenses, about 24% of our expenses are operations and administration. The rest is ministry. We try and keep our operations and administration down to a minimum and put money into ministry. If we go back 12 years and take a look at our revenue, the revenue for the National Ministries commitment is in the blue line, and the total operating revenue is the red line. Again, we have done more to try and reach out to our major donors and to other donors and to look for other sources of revenue to enhance the budget of the Archdiocese and not place all of that obligation fully onto the communities. If you look at where we've increased our revenue components over the last 12 years, the National Ministries commitment has doubled over that period of time. Direct mail campaign has gone up about 68%. Our major gifts has gone up by 700%. We were averaging major gifts of about $200,000, $300,000. We've had highs over the last few years of over $5 million in our major gifts from major donors. Ionian Village revenue, ministries, and total operating revenue has gone up about 128%. So where did the money go? We're raising more money. What are we doing with it? Again, I mentioned before, we want to push money back into the ministry operations of the metropolis and also in the ministries. These are the major component increases of the expenses over that period of time. 61% in education has increased. The metropolis ministries has gone up by 126% over that period of time. Orthodox New World, 83%. Communications, 6%. Community services, 78%. Administration up by 8%. Operations up 83%. And our total operating 59%. The operations is skewed by by our legal obligations that we had paid over time. And just to give you a brief history for those of you who didn't know, in 2000, when His Eminence, in 1999-2000, when His Eminence took over as the Archbishop, there was about a $6 million debt that needed to be serviced at that time. In addition to that $6 million debt, we were over this past 12-year period, we were hit with $17 million in additional liabilities from legal lawsuits and settlements. So that's $23 million in debt service that had to be handled over the last 12 years. So in addition to what we've been doing to trying to keep the doors open and the lights on and fund ministry, $23 million also had to be taken care of to pay down other obligations and pay down that debt. And as you saw earlier, we have done that, and we continue to strive to keep as lean of an operation as we possibly can. So that's a quick summary of where we have been. I will talk briefly about the budget, and then I will give it to George. The budget that you see in your packet and that was presented to the Finance Committee yesterday was debated and discussed with the Finance Committees of the metropolises. It was also there was a discussion that I had with the Eparchial Synod during one of their meetings about the need to be mindful of the community's ability to absorb additional expense in the recent time and with the current economy. So the Finance Committee looked at the budget, and what was proposed in this budget is a 2% on the expense side, a 2% increase for 2013, which is less than what the cost of living would be, and a 2% increase for the budget from 13 to 14. On the income side, the Finance Committee said you can do we'll do 2% and 2%, but we're not going to increase the national ministry's commitment allocation to the communities, to the metropolises in total. The additional 2% has to come from other sources, meaning our unrestricted contributions. So what this budget proposes is a flat line for both 2013 and 2014 for the national ministry's commitment. And if you looked at the numbers, you would say, well, that's not really what it shows there. It doesn't show that because we used to budget 93% of what we allocated to the communities because we did not have a good track record of collection. As you saw from the slides, we're up to about 99% collected by the end of the year. So the Finance Committee decided to not have that additional cushion that we used to put into the budget from 93% to 100% and fully put into the budget the 100%. So there is no real increase per se to the national ministry's commitment line item that the communities would fund to the national ministries. The increase comes from other areas of revenue. So that is really the essence of this budget. It's a flat budget for the next 2 years. We're not growing anything unless we get funding from our endowment funds like Leadership 100 and Faith. So any new programs or new programs within ministry will have to come from outside sources of fundraising or from the endowments that we have in terms of grant requests. And that's the very simple presentation of the budget. I thank you for your attention.